Everybody, it's Kate Richburg, and if it's Friday, it must be Free Tip Friday here at beadshop.com. How are you all? I hope everybody's doing well. I have a fun project for you today, as always. I'm going to jump onto my social media to make sure that I can see all of your questions here. I think I've found you, and hopefully you are finding me. And there we are. Yes, I see you. Fantastic. Let me make sure that the volume is all the way down. Alrighty. I see you, you see me, we're ready to go. All right, well, it's great to have you all here today. I hope you've had a great week. We've had a busy week here at beadshop.com. We are busy filling your orders and having fun and creating new projects and getting stuff ready for Free Tip Friday for next week. So it's been a busy, busy week. So it's great to see all of you. Look, I see everybody who's jumping on here. I'll play Romper Room here. I see Emily. I see Landa. I see, who do I see? I see my mom. I see Teresa. I see Rosie. Great. Well, thank you guys so much for joining me today. It's great to see you all. So you may have watched our Wednesday broadcast with Emily and her carrier beads. And that carrier bead, those bracelets, I think are really, really so wonderful and so beautiful. Geeta, I just saw that Geeta jumped on as beadshop.com. She's going to be doing a little linking on the other side of the world and on the other side of the camera. So it's great. Thank you as always, Geeta, for your fast fingers and your linking here for beadshop.com. Well, you saw on Wednesday, and if you didn't, you can watch the replay on various outlets. You can watch it on our Facebook page, our website, beadshop.com, or on our YouTube channel, especially if you subscribe to that YouTube channel. You'll get that, that notice when new stuff is posted. But Emily did an amazing job with carrier beads. I don't know if you guys, like I said, if you guys watched it, but it was so... I just love those bracelets so much. And she made them kind of a pull-on bracelet, right? So it was kind of like a cuff. It kind of had some kind of vintage flair to it. I really, really dug it with those, with that peyote stitch over the top. So it started the wheels turning in my head, as the wheels do on Wednesday afternoon. You know, oh my gosh, what am I going to do for Free Tip Friday? So I thought, you know what? I'm going to continue with those carrier beads. And if you know me, and if you know the kind of jewelry I love vintage jewelry. I love things with a vintage feel. My mom and I have always kind of had a love of vintage jewelry, and we both have pretty good vintage jewelry collections, one of which I'm wearing a little vintage sterling bracelet today in my stack. But I love vintage. And so I thought, you know, these two hole beads, these carrier beads, and let me grab one off the desk here. These two hole beads, they look like this, and you saw us working with them on Wednesday. We have a whole bunch of really great colors, and we're going to be adding more colors to them. But it's a traditional Czechoslovakian glass bead, and you can see, this is the way they come. They come strung like this with, let's see, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 15 beads per strand. And you can see, if I hold the little end towards you, you can see there's two holes here, right? Two hole beads to me scream vintage, because that is really some of the first two hole beads like that were used in like vintage cuffs, or sometimes you see vintage chokers that have a strand up here and then strands coming down in that second hole. So there's all kinds of vintage applications you could do with them. So my wheels started turning and turning in my head, and I thought, I love a vintage cuff. And when I was a little girl, you may have one of these at home, especially those of you who are jewelry collectors. I don't know if you remember back in the day, but there would be like 5 strands of pearls that were graduated in size, with a big pearl in the center and then smaller pearls coming around. And maybe it was a stack of like I don't know, 5 of those, and they were strung on like memory wire, right? And then they had wire maybe holding them together. So it was like a pearl cuff that you'd take on and off. And I had one when I was little out of my grand's jewelry box, and I loved that thing. And so it always, when I think about memory wire, it always kind of inspires me to think back to that piece of jewelry and to think, oh, I could create a cuff with memory wire. So 2 whole beads plus memory wire is going to equal a cool cuff. So let me show you. I'm going to turn the camera around, if you'll bear with me, and let's take a look at what we're going to make today. Okay, so I'm going to turn here. I'm using my, I am my own camera woman today, of course, so bear with me here as I turn this camera around. But you can see my work surface, you can see those baskets on the floor, and you can also see what I've got on the desk in front of me. So again, bear with me right here. I'm going to get everything nice and squared away, and then we'll jump in. Oops, sorry about that. Let me get this nice and tightened down and make sure that's straight. And I'm going to lift the camera up just a touch so you get a little more of a bird's eye. And then I'll straighten everything out here. There we go. That looks a little bit better. So if you did watch the broadcast on Wednesday, there you go. Let me even this out a little bit. If you watched the broadcast on Wednesday, you did see that we strung our memory wire pieces, or our carrier bead pieces on Stretch Magic, which is another kind of vintagey way to kind of deal with the carrier beads. You know, a stretchy bracelet is kind of a vintagey kind of feel, has kind of a vintage feel to it. But this memory wire, I think, really will, I don't know, kind of showcase the beauty of these beads. And you could, if you wanted, like when Emily was working with the peyote stitch over the carrier beads, you could do carrier beads, you know, you could do some peyote stitch over a few of these in this design too, right? Can you guys hear me okay? Is the sound all right? I hope the sound is okay for you guys here. You can hear me all right. I'm going to get your comments up here in front of me so I can see you guys. Okay, so you can see right here, I've got something laid out, okay? And you can see it looks suspiciously like a cuff. I'm going to open the blinds a little bit to get it a little bit brighter in here too, so you guys can see a little bit. There we go. Nicole, I saw your comment. I am excited to see you in Oaks as well. Yes, there is, we're just about a month out from Bead Fest in Philly, and my classes, you guys, are almost full. I'm teaching 4 different classes, and one of them is my classic soldering class. So if you are going to Bead Fest, we are going to be doing a little meet and greet. Janice and Drea and I are going to be doing a meet and greet probably that Saturday at Bead Fest. And so you can go to the Bead Fest website and take a look at what classes remain. But my classes, thanks to you guys, are so good. They're almost full, which I really, really am very grateful for. So thank you for that. But Nikki, I'm really excited to see you there as well. It'll be great. It'll be great. And we'll be giving out more information about our meet and greet as well coming up. All right, so you can see, let me get this camera over a little bit so everything is in frame. You can see what I've got going on here. I have what I'm going to be using today is I'm going to be using the memory wire. That is the bracelet memory wire, and it's the 2 1/4 inch round. I'm doing it a little bit bigger because I've got so many beads that are going on this. So I just made a random decision, and the decision was 2 1/4, and we'll see how how this goes together. Okay, so I've got it right here. I also have, I think I'm going to be using 2 strands as my guess of this 4mm Persian turquoise Picasso. Now, it's kind of hard to see the colorway, but I'm going to hold them up so you can see here. This is the olive bronze carrier bead that we have, and I'm going to be using 2 strands of those as well. Now, the colorway is a little goofy, but I wanted it to kind of have a vintage feeling. And if you look at a lot of vintage beaded pieces, the colors are a little kind of funky. And so I thought that this Persian turquoise Picasso, the Picasso kind of has a bronze look to it, which really picked up on the olive bronze of this carrier bead. So that's what I went with. But you could use, you guys, any 4mm and any color of the carrier bead that you liked. Okay, whatever worked for you. All right. So you can see I have laid out a little pattern here with my beads, and you can see that it's like 4 lines. There's going to be 4 strands going through. It'll go here. Let me get down a little bit so you can see this. 1, 2, 3, and 4. My first strand here, or my first line, will be, I'll pick up a carrier bead, 2 fire polish, a carrier bead, 2 fire polish. The second line will be all carrier beads. You can see that going through. The third line will also be all carrier beads, and then the last line will be carrier bead 4mm, carrier bead 4mm. Okay, so that's kind of the pattern. And in order for me to not screw it up, I laid it out so I would have kind of a layout to go by. Hi, Faye, I just saw that you jumped on. Hello, hello. So then I prepared my memory wire. And so you can see here, I clipped off, I don't know, about 1.25 rounds. Can you see that overlap there? Of memory wire, because I wasn't quite sure how much I'd need, but I wanted enough so that I'd have a good overlap. The cuff probably won't overlap, but we'll see how it goes. Okay. My mom, ye of little faith, is this going to work? Well, we'll see, Ma. We'll see if it's going to work. It may all end in tears. You never know. So I've got 3 of these, 1, 2, 3, and I'm going to prepare the 4th. Okay. And so I'm going to come in, and the way that I cut this, I just wanted to show you. I'll come in with my memory wire and my memory wire cutter. Do remember, you guys, that if I cut my memory wire with my good old Xuron cutter or something like that, it's going to leave a little hole. It's going to dent this because this memory wire is such hard wire. But this memory wire cutter, also by Xuron, which we sell here on Bead Shop, is the one that we want to clip with. So listen to that click, how great it just clips it through and it's done, right? So now I've got my 4th round of wire. Let me open up the shot here so you can see a little bit better. All right. So I'm going to get my baggie, and I kind of want to push this over. So let me do that. Let me see if I can. There we go. Pushed over, and this is here. So I'm going to get my zap, and I'm going to glue a bead onto the end, okay, like I did here. And that's going to be my stopper bead right here at the end, okay? So I'm going to take out a little bit of zap, put it on my baggie. The zap glue, you guys, cures, I guess is the right word, so quickly. So you've got to work pretty fast when you're working. So I'm going to put my zap on the end like that. Okay, let me get in tight so you guys can see. Get in real tight there. Now I'm going to get my 4mm. I'm going to slide it on over that glue. And I'm going to make sure that there isn't too much wire, or really any wire at all, sticking out at the end. And I'm going to put a little bit of glue at the end of that wire to make sure that when I push it down, it's going to stay on the end. Okay? And I'm going to just let that sit, and by the time I'm ready for it, it's going to be ready. It's going to be done. So I'm going to get this glue out of my way, because you know what I'm going to do. I'll put my arm in it. So I'm going to move this around. Put this over there. So now I'm going to string, and we'll see, Mama. I don't know. I haven't strung it yet. I've just laid it out. So we'll see if it works. But I'm going to start. This is number 1. So I'm going to put this guy on one wire. I'm going to put a second wire through the second hole. All right, so that's 1 and 2. And then I'm going to put 3 and 4 on its own wire. Okay, so here's hole number 3. And you can see I'm ready for this one. Whoops. And it's not ready. They set up so quickly when I was doing this off camera. Come on now. Get a little more glue. I was so confident too in my glue, wasn't I? There we go. Really make sure that it gets in there. And that gets in there. Alrighty. You know, you could maybe crimp, Margaret. That's a great question. Margaret asks if anyone has used a crimp bead at the end of memory wire. My feeling is the metal-to-metal connection might cause the crimp tube to split or break. So I think that this glue is a much better way of going. And when it behaves itself, and you can see this one is really on there, when it behaves itself, it's really, really great. So let's see, is it on there? Yeah, it's on there. All right. Thank goodness. So let's put in, this is line number 4. Okay. Yeah, you could also use a loop and a dangle. Definitely. And you know what? I thought about a loop and a dangle, and I did bring these little leaves they're called falling. It's our antique brass leaf. And I thought that if I was having trouble on the other side, I would use, I'd use a dangle on the other. And so Trish, you say you have used a crimp, and if it works, that's great. Okay, that's great. Alrighty, so I've got my wires here. Okay, so there's my 2 bracelets. And like the first row of anything, like peyote stitch or whatever, it kind of doesn't want to behave itself. But we've got to get that second, the second row on there. So see how here are my beads right here, and here are the 2 wires. So I get these 2 wires in the middle. Make sure they're not crossed over. Let me get in frame, sorry. Make sure they're not crossed over, I said. And put on my center wire, or my center bead, on these horrible little memory wire ends. All right? So let's pull this on. So there we go. Look at that. Bam. Sorry, let me try and keep in frame here. Okay. So now on this wire over here and this wire over here, I have laid out 2, I'm going to come around here. There we go. I have laid out 2 4mm beads. Okay, so let's see if 2 4mm take up this space. It may be 3. Okay. And I could roll the end of the wire into a loop. Definitely, definitely, definitely. And I could, since all of this wire is going to be covered, I could make the outside wires one color of memory wire and the inside wires another color, so I wouldn't have to guess which wires I was using. But but you know, I'm the boss of this memory wire, so I'm just gonna come in and take a look here. So there's 2 on, and 2 looks like it's about right. Okay. I don't know. We could do maybe 1 wire at a time too. You know, it may be a little bit easier. But I kind of wanted you guys to see how this cuff was taking shape. So I'm taking matters into my own hands here. It'll right itself after a couple of rows because the cuff will become more stable. So you're just going to have to sit through me fumbling around for a couple more rows of beads, and then all should be better. Maybe. I don't know. Let me see here. But come on, you got to have the courage of your convictions. Either go big, you guys, or go home. Right? There we go. So there's our 3. Alrighty. So yeah, look at that. We've got our first ones on. So let's put our next bead on, shall we? It's these guys. It's the carrier beads. So 2 carrier beads on the first 2 wires. Right here. Done and done. And 2 carriers on the second wire. Slide that down. And slide this time. Yeah, Tammy, that's exactly right. Once the framework is in place, it'll be better. It'll be easier to handle. You just have to wrestle your way through it a little bit, right? You just got to go for it, right? So here's this. So let's slide these 2 down. There we go. All right. So now there are 3 rows. And now I just want to double check and see how this is looking. Yeah, looks good. Right? Can you guys see that? Okay. I kind of dig it. So now I just have to repeat this row, right? So I'm going to go to a carrier bead in the center to stabilize it, and then the 2 4mm on either side. Okay. That should work. And yeah, I think using different memory wires, using 2 different colors in the center, or you know, the same color in the center and a different color on each end, might really help you to figure out which wire is which. So that's a good, that might be a good tip that comes out of this. And again, I kind of want to build all of these rows kind of at the same time, so I'm making sure that I'm not doing anything to, that I'm not mixing up my beads or crossing my rows, right? So what are you going to do? Right? I know, you just have to tell yourself, hey man, I'm in charge. Oh, thanks, Chris Osborne. I just love a piece of vintage jewelry. There we go. That's coming together. And I also have a tendency, for a while I was making a lot of cuffs. I just love the way cuffs look. And I was making like twin cuffs, you know, so that you would wear, I don't know if you saw it kind of in the 50s when ladies would wear fancy evening gowns. They'd wear, you know, some long gloves, and they'd have twin cuffs, one on each wrist over the gloves. So that's what this kind of inspired me. Those twin cuffs kind of inspired me. The memory of those in my head. So it would be cool if you're wearing, I don't know, some kind of fancy dress, or I don't know, even an everyday dress. Who cares? Make yourself a pair of twin cuffs to wear with those. To wear with your frock. There we go. Wrestle it into place. There we go. So we're getting it done. I'm going to add a few more here. While I'm doing that, I'll talk a little bit about the carrier beads and what the carrier beads are all about. Carrier beads are, let me make sure I'm not off with my design here. the carrier beads are a check glass bead, and they are made, they're pressed. So there's a mold, like a little, looks like a little plier almost, or a big plier rather. And these beads are molded. They're kind of cut out of molten glass, kind of, you know, gripped with the plier and cut. And they're done very, very quickly in the kind of a traditional, it's a very traditional bead making technique. And so the glass on these, most of the glass is probably either a black or a white or something underneath, and then the coatings are added sometimes post-production, or sometimes they're added when the beads are being annealed and cooled. So it's kind of a cool vintage bead style that is still made today. You know, check glass beads are still made sometimes in the same factories or by the same families that have been making them for many, many years. So that's why sometimes you see variations in color with the check glass because it's very hard to replicate the exact color with glass, especially with red glass. Red glass is a hard glass to do because it contains gold, usually, or it used to. And so that's why you see reds and purples are not quite the vibrant colors that the vintage glass used to be way back in the day. So, but again, they're still made in the exact same way a lot of times that they were made at the turn of the last century. So, you know, it's kind of cool to think that bead technology, though our technology is going fast and furious, that bead technology is still kind of the same. Drea, I like that you were saying that you wanted to be fancy. I missed what you wanted to be fancy about, but I'm sure I like that story. Yeah, anytime I can wear gloves, you guys, I know it's kind of funny. You know, no one wears gloves anymore, but I seem to be the keeper of all of our family's vintage gloves, so I have a lot of gloves from my aunts and my gran. So here we are. I've got a good portion of this cuff made, so let me try it on and see where we are. I think it looks like I'm a little over half done, or almost exactly half done. Like that, right? Oh, Opera Link gloves to my prom. Fancy you. I think that's the best story I've heard all day, Drea. I love it. I love it. So we're about halfway there. So let me do a count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I need to do about 5 more rows on this side, and then we're good to go, right? Yeah, maybe gloves will make a big comeback. I don't know. You never know. Right? Gloves, hats, all good times, right? I do have some hats as well. I don't know. I like a throwback. I think that's why I like watching vintage movies or older movies. I don't know if you guys are old movie fans, but I watch it almost as much for the clothing as I do for the storyline. So it's a good one. It's a good way to kind of see the fashions of the past. All right, now I'm going to put these 2 on here, 1 and 2. And see, it's going a lot faster now that you've kind of established your pattern. In the beginning, you guys, what you want to do is make sure that you're not twisting the memory wire. That's the thing that will give you a little bit of heartache and pain, right? So make sure that things aren't twisted. So I put on the center carrier bead like this, bam, and the 2 on either side. Edith Head, thanks, Ma. You know, it's really true. That's why I have my hair in a bob, because Edith Head is kind of my one of my spirit animals, along with Julia Child and Margot Channing from All About Eve. And it is true. It is true. And if you haven't watched All About Eve, I recommend getting it on iTunes this weekend and taking a bumpy ride with Betty Davis. Yes, it's true. It is true. There we go. And see, this is really shaping up. You could also, you guys, do this with some different colors. This carrier bead could be a contrast. This carrier bead could be gold or the copper or something instead of all one color. I don't know. Just depends on what you like. The carrier beads, there are so many great colors to choose from. Oh, Chris Osborne. Chris is saying she's talking about all of these things are making her feel old because she remembers from wearing them the first time. You know, Chris, I actually kind of feel the same way, though. I am in my early 50s now. I do kind of feel that way about the clothing of my youth, 80s clothing, especially when I see the kids these days wearing like neon and stuff that I wore in high school, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I feel so old. But in high school I wore a lot of clothes from the 50s and 60s, so I guess that's how maybe my gran felt at the time when I was wearing her old clothes. So, you know, what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? All right, we're getting there. So close. And what I did was I measured out my line of beads before I strung them, and I had about just maybe shy of 6 inches of beading. My wrist measures out at about 6.5 inches, so 6.5, I need a little bit of space, so this might be about the right size. So let me see. Let me do this here. Okay. Flashdance slice shirts. That is also very true. Did anyone have an Esprit sweatshirt? I did. I cut that sucker up, that one shoulder sweatshirt. Yes, indeedy, I did. Trish, you're saying you feel like you want something between the carrier beads? Yeah, by all means, you could do that. You know, a little slice of a Hishi bead or a little, the daisy spacer we have would also look great in between. Sure, you bet. You could put another spacer in between here. You know, as I like to say, you do you, okay? So let's look at the back here and let's kind of see. We've got a cuff looking thing. So I'm going to put it on my wrist and see what it looks like, shall we? And if I turn it round and I take a look at the back, if I put my little single bead on, it'll be like that. If I put another row will give me, I think another row might be a little too much. You know, it might make it a little, overlap a little bit. So I'm going to call this good for me because it'll end about right there with the beads that I'm going to add. Okay, so I'm going to just put on all 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 beads here. 1, 2, 3, and 4. There we go. And I'm going to tighten everything down. Now, okay, I'm running up into a little bit of a dilemma here, okay? I've got to be able, I need to have these close, because I want the cuff to be tight. I don't want it to move around too much. I need enough room to glue these beads on the end. I also need enough room to clip here off the back. And these memory wire cutters, the only downside to these is they're not like a side cutter that you can get right up against that. So I need a little you know, I can't quite do it there, so I have to do a little bit of pre-planning. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to give each of these wires, can you see, because the center ones are like sticking out, I'm going to give each of these wires a little tug to make sure that everything is nice and tight and snug. Okay? And the beads are down there, they look good. The beads that are here are good. Now I need to see how I'm going to keep all of this business together, because this is where it could all go south. I'm going to put a piece of tape there, okay? I'm going to kind of tape all these beads together so they don't move, all right? Now, what I'm going to do is, let me tell you what I'm going to do. And I could make a loop. Maybe I'll make a loop just on one of these. I could. You know, I'll do a loop just on one. I'll save one of these and do a loop on one, and I'll cut the other ones away. Before I cut anything, you guys, I'm going to just make sure that everything is tight enough. Everything looks good. I'm going to tighten everything. Tighten, tighten, pull, pull, pull. Now I'm going to mark a dot right there with my Sharpie marker. So when I take these beads off, and this one I'm actually going to loop, so I'm not going to worry. When I take these beads off, I know that my mark was a little tall, so I'm going to just come in and cut just below that mark. Okay, there it is. And I want to be really careful not to let this go back through. All right, so let me just glue these beads on. Okay, where's my zap? Who hid my zap glue? Well, it was me. Where is it? Let me keep looking. I know it's here on this table somewhere. I know, here it is. There it is. Yes, got it. Okay, I'm going to do this all one-handed. If I had thought about it, I would have put a little bit of zap glue out on my baggie before I was holding this wire, this cuff, but that's all right. Put that sucker on there, put the lid back on. Alrighty. Now, let's get a little bit of glue, that zap. We need a little bit of room for the beads to move around on the wire, so it's okay that I have just a tiny little bit of space there. I'm going to put a little bit of glue right there, and I'm going to take this excess off. And the reason, Tam, while I didn't glue the beads on and then cut, was that the memory wire cutter, I can't get right up next to the bead, so it would leave this horrible little scratchy tail on the end. So I really do have to cut first. At least that's what my brain is telling me. So there's that one. And if it's, let's do this third one here. Do I have enough glue? Let me see if I do. And if the wires are slightly off, just slightly, by maybe like a 32nd of an inch, I don't think it's going to make too much difference, because it'll all even out in the body of the piece. And Deb, you were asking what size wire is this? This is the memory wire, and it is the 2 3/4 diameter. You can see that. I'm sorry, 2 1/4, not 2 3/4. And it, I used that size because I was using so many beads, so I thought I'd need a little bit of a bigger cuff. So this looks good. So now this one, I'll just go ahead and I will clip, and I'll turn a loop. Okay, and I don't know, maybe I don't need a really big loop, so maybe there. Let me get my round nose plier. The question, can I use E6000? You know, the Zap glue, I'm just going to roll it in the direction of the curve. The Zap glue sets almost instantly. So on a piece like this, trying to get the E6000 to stay, I think would be a pain in the butt, I'll be honest. So that's why I used the Zap. Here's my little leaf. So I made my loop. I'm going to lift. I'm going to put on my leaf. I'm going to close. And you could surely use dangles all the way across, for sure. You don't have to glue the beads in place. But let me take the tape off of this now. Put the tape over there. Whoops! Oh, one came off. Two came off. Well, let me just glue them back on. Right? Who's the boss? Me. Put these suckers on. I think I want to make sure that I get enough Zap on there so that the bead hole really adheres to the wire. So let me just do that again. No big deal. Come on now. Get right on there. There we have it. And I'm going to do the same thing right here. Get this, put the glue on there. I'm using a little more glue. Think about it in your head that you're in charge of the memory wire. You're the boss there. Get it down there. I've got a little bit extra, so I'm going to use my toothpick to clean that extra little puddle of glue right off. That's okay. If they come off, you're just going to put them back on. Right? And Chris, your question about getting the loop with the memory wire, I'm going to leave this here for just a second. I'm going to turn a loop on this memory wire so you can see it one more time. So see here, here's my wire. Let me get really tight. Okay, tight, 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 tight. So here's my end, and let's say that let me put some beads on here. Put a piece of tape on, right? Put that on there. There we go. And let me just slide a couple of beads on. 1 bead, 2 beads, so we've got something that approximates the cuff, right? 2 beads and 3 beads. Okay. So I'm going to cut, leaving, let me get my little ruler here so you can see. I'm going to leave maybe about 1, 2, maybe 3/8 of an inch or so. Maybe even 1/4 of an inch. I like the looks of that. Okay? And there's my 1/4 inch right there. Okay? Alrighty. So now, with the side view, whoops, let me get back into frame. Sorry. I'm going to get my round nose. And I move my hand and my piece both at the same time when I do this. And this loop's going to be pretty small. So see, I'm moving the tool and I'm pushing with this hand too. Push, push, push. Roll it back around. Push, push, push. And you can see, whoops, my tape slid just a little bit. But you can see that my loop is nice and even. And what I can also do is I can kind of, let me see if I can show you this way. I can kind of go past the wire a little bit as I'm looping and then pull it back a little so that it really kind of closes right there. Alrighty. And some of you mentioned, I saw you use your crimping pliers to close the loop tight. It's not a bad idea. You can kind of do this. I don't know if you guys can see in between the loops there, but give it a little love. Now this memory wire that we carry, it's the memory wire from Beadsmith, and so it's much more supple than some. Sometimes you get memory wire that's really super stiff, and it's really hard to get that loop to stay closed. But again, when I'm closing, I'll move my loop towards the memory or towards the curve of the wire. And since the memory wire is meant to curve in that direction, I feel that it stays a little bit better. You were saying, Tammy, that you turn your memory wire in the opposite way. You could do it like that, but I feel like I'm fighting the memory, but that also works. See, I'm going in the opposite direction. That works okay too. And so this is going with the memory, and this is going against the memory. The memory wire, the flat memory wire fit in the carrier holes. No, just round memory wire will fit, Michelle. I don't think the flat will work. And you can see here, everything is glued, everything is on, nothing's coming off. So here's our cuff, and let me try it on. I'm going to call this my Margot Channing cuff. Look at how cool that is. I kind of love it. And on this side, you can see there's it's space. It fits nicely. It's not too tight. It's not too loose. Maybe I would do one more row there. I don't know. I would have to play around with the sizing, but it actually fits pretty well. I dig it. I love it. I'm going to go try it on Cara too in a little while and see how it fits on her wrist. But I think it's pretty good. I don't know how you feel, but I like it. I think. And I like to stack, so I think it's kind of just like a stack bracelet all in one. You can see a little bit of the memory wire coming through, not so much that it bugs me really, and using a little bit of that tribal hishi might be cool in this piece, but I think this is a great base design for you to play with. And I think that little charm, that little falling leaf charm in antique brass works pretty well. How wide is it? Kim, I'll tell you. Across, let's look. It's about the memory wire size. The interior is maybe about 2 1/4 across, just like the memory wire. Where's my memory wire? So you can see it didn't stretch it. It didn't stretch it all that much. See, it's about the same. So if you have a wrist that's a little smaller, I might go down to the 2 inch. It just depends on what works for you. Okay. But yeah, I think it's cool. I think it's a cool way to use carrier beads in kind of a different configuration. Again, I would like to see also if I tried playing around with making these carrier beads in the center a different color. It might be kind of good. So not too bad for literally something right off the cuff. So as always, I'll do a recap of this Free Tip Friday on our blog, The Bead Table, and you can find a link to the Bead Table blog right on our front page of our website at beadshop.com. You will be able to find everything carrier beads, 4mm, and the memory wire, of course, right on our website at beadshop.com. You know, I'm going to move the camera around here while I'm saying goodbye to you all. We really do appreciate all of you guys and how you have supported our small business here, our small online business. We really, really appreciate all of the shares, all of the social media, and all of your good wishes and emails that you send us. It keeps us working hard and doing our best. Our fulfillment team, Cara and Myra and Ivan in shipping, are getting those orders out as quickly as we can. We're almost caught up, so stay tuned to your emails for your shipping notification if you have orders coming. Drea also puts shipping notifications in your newsletters as well. One last question. It looks like, Sharon, you asked hypo cement with this. I would, whoops, you can only see my eyes. Let me get this, that's a little bit better. I would say that Zap Glue is my go-to glue for this because it's quick, it's, whoops, and one of course just came off. I'm going to have to re-glue it, and, but that's okay. But it's quick, it's fast, and it should stay nice and even. You want to, since I did have one fall off, you do want to let this cure 24 hours before I would wear it. So I'm going to re-glue this guy and let it sit overnight. But yep, Karen will photograph this. It'll be on the front page. And it's cool. I think I'll make another one for a Margot Channing outfit. Okay, how does that sound? All right, dear ladies and gentlemen, thank you again so much. Let me close this so you can see it's such a pretty day, but it's also getting a little bit of a glare. There we go. All right, so I will see you on Wednesday for Facebook Live with Emily. She has an amazing waterfall. We're calling it the Lantern Earring. It involves brick stitch and it involves fringe. It's going to be amazing. So that'll be up. You'll see that project up for a little bit of a preview on Tuesday. Episode notes from Carrier Beads will be up on Monday. And everyone have a fantastic weekend. I'll see you next week for Facebook Live. Again, you can find everything right here, beadshop.com. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you guys soon. Bye-bye.